What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Blue Collar Growth Network podcast. I'm your host, Chance Richardson, and today I have a very special guest, someone that I've been looking forward to talking with, and I think that you'll get a lot of value from her as well. My guest today has one of the most interesting career paths I've ever come across. She went to school for agriculture, spent time working on farms and in coffee shops, then spent over a decade in finance and operations, including 7 years as an operational CFO, guiding businesses through many financial situations. And then she did something that most people would never even think about doing. She bought an existing business, took over as CEO, and has been building this business into something very special. She is the CEO of MKB CFO and Bookkeeping, a fractional CFO and bookkeeping firm that has managed over 40 million in revenue and has a very specific soft spot for listeners like you, the blue collar industry and service-based businesses, the people who work the hardest and often understand their money the least. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's so much cooler when somebody else says it.
She is also the host of the Financial Operator Cash In, Chaos Out podcast, where she sits down with real business owners and digs into their financial challenges they've actually faced. Her mission is simple: help business owners understand their numbers, make smarter decisions, and stop feeling like they're running on a hamster wheel, wondering where all the money went. Everyone, please welcome Jen Fizer. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that intro.
Yep. Hey, you're an impressive entrepreneur in my eyes. I think that you've I've followed you on social media for a long time. We're in some of the same business groups, same groups on Facebook, and just seeing your journey and how far you've come along the last couple of years has been really fun to watch and inspiring to watch as well. Can you just tell us a little bit? I know I went over some of the stuff, but can you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and how you went from being in the agriculture industry to where you are now?
Well, because as you mentioned, like I have not taken the traditional career path in any sense of the world or word. And like for a long time early in my career, I saw that as like such a detriment to me because I was like, I'm not on the path that I want to be. I don't know how to
Hmm.
get on the path that I want. And then it kind of hit me one day. It was actually when I was going to buy the coffee shop that I bought back in 2019. And it hit me that I had actually been preparing myself for business ownership,
Hmm.
not like a traditional career path, right? Like I wasn't in corporate working through working up the ladder. I was just like acquiring all these really somewhat random skills,
Yep.
but I was really just like becoming a well-rounded entrepreneur in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. I worked in a staffing agency as a recruiter, did admin work. And then I worked for the farm for 7 years, and I started as just kind of like in the finance, like the bookkeeper basically, and then got promoted up to CFO. We
Hmm.
went through a bankruptcy. Um, that was we were like a $10 million farm at that point. So
Wow.
like all of these things kind of just like again, it was like all of these things that I was looking at as negatives. Once I was faced with like, oh, I want to buy a business, I was like, well, I already know I know how to hire, I know how to run the finances, I know how to do marketing, like all of these things. I was like, I actually prepared myself pretty well for this. So
Yep. Yeah.
that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like whenever you start looking back, over your life after you've had some experiences and stuff, and you realize, that how everything kind of lined up for you
Mhm.
to, and even now, like the what you're going through right now, like it's probably preparing you for something even bigger and even different than what you're
Yeah.
doing now, and it's
Well, and
just.
funnily enough, I didn't even mention this, but when I was while I owned the coffee shops,
Mhm.
so you gave a pretty good timeline of exactly how that happened. I like graduated from college, had a couple of random jobs, and then I worked for the farm, worked in finance there. I thought that was like my dream job because you mentioned I have a degree in ag, and
Mm-hmm.
then I love finance, right? So I was like, oh, this is my dream job, and it was not. Um, but then I bought the coffee shops. I bought one coffee shop in 2019, and then another one in 2022. I
Mm-hmm.
think. Trying to remember my dates here. Um, but during that time, while I owned the coffee shops, I also worked for another firm that does they do like fractional CFO,
Mm-hmm.
fractional accounting pieces, really for like nonprofits. And I worked more on the internal team. So I was doing the hiring, I was marketing operations, I was kind of building my future business. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was learning all of the pieces about how you build an accounting firm before I owned an accounting firm. So that one really set me up really well because when I sold the coffee shops in 2024, I went and worked with Mills. I took on a couple of clients while I was still at that other accounting firm.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody that doesn't know, Mills is the former owner of Mills Knows Bills, which is now MKB. So if you ever wonder where those letters came from, that's that's what it is.
Yep.
Um, but I spent like 3 years building another firm, and got really like a firsthand experience for like what is possible in this realm before I even went on out on my own. So
Mm.
that was a really great experience. And yeah, like you said, who knows what I'm preparing myself for right now, but
Yep.
always
Um.
open to opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's just what we do as business owners. I think it's like, we just have plans. Those plans kind of fade away or they change up or something, and then we have to just change with them and reevaluate and just with the coffee shops. Did you end up exiting those coffee shops, or you still own them now?
No, I sold July 1st, 2024. So
Mm-hmm.
we're coming up on 2 years ago that I sold them. I owned for about 5 years the coffee shop, and it was just, kind of one of those things that it takes a lot of effort for like not a lot of
Mm-hmm.
payout.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was a really great, I loved owning them, and it really got me involved in the community in a way that I never had been before.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like owning a brick and mortar business was not something that I'd ever really thought about, but it was a good learning experience in a lot of different ways, but it was also just like such a way for me to become so enmeshed in my community that's it's helped in numerous ways outside of just business.
Yep. So as you mentioned, you didn't start MKB. What made you want to buy a business instead of starting that business from scratch? Is it like previous experience that you had with the coffee shops, or what made you want to just go ahead and buy something rather than starting something
Yeah.
fresh?
I love this question because in I don't even know, probably like 2015, 16, 17, somewhere in there, I was like really I decided that I'd wanted to own a business, but I had no idea what, right? Like I was
Mm-hmm.
just like I don't know how to translate my experience into some sort of business. So I kept like this was one of my limiting beliefs that I had to kind of work through because I thought that I had to like start something. I didn't really have the money to be able to buy, or I didn't think so, be able to
Mm-hmm.
buy a business, nor did I think I had the experience to be able to do that. So when the coffee shops came up, they were cheap, and I was like, I've worked in restaurants. I've worked like I could see the ways that I could improve it. I was like, that's a great way to tackle that. And that really opened my eyes to the idea of buying businesses versus
Mm-hmm.
starting them. And that's where like I am not a person that just has this like passion for what like I was not passionate about coffee or restaurants in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I never even ordered a latte, I'm gonna tell you that, like, I had no idea what they were like, knew nothing about coffee. But I was like, I understand business and I understand how to
Mm-hmm.
make this better. So once I'd done it one time, I was like, why would I ever start a business again when I could like, I can look at finances and know whether something's working or not and be able to look at the business as a whole and kind of understand where it could improve.
Mm-hmm.
So from then on out, I was like, I am only ever going to buy an existing business because it's way easier to buy something after it's already up and running than to try to get it started.
Yep. And I think with the blue collar industry and home service businesses right now, there's a huge opportunity for a lot of those business owners to be able to buy, like if you're out and you're in the trades, if you're just like an HVAC technician and you want to get in business, that is a good way to just get into it, because there's so many baby boomers that are retiring right now. A lot of their kids don't really want to take the business over, don't care to go that route. So
Mhm.
a lot of these business owners are starting to sell, and they're selling at good prices. So I think there's all kind of different ways that you could work out deals with the current business owner to where you don't have to come out with a ton of cash. And
Mhm.
there's also a lot of private equity, I think, right now out there that's eating up a
Mhm.
lot of these businesses as well. But have you had any experience with that, like helping any business owners prepare for acquisitions or buying other businesses?
Mhm. Yeah, so I've actually, when I was working at the accounting firm that I was at right before MKB, we actually were purchased by private equity probably about 2024 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of part of that process and understanding what it was like to be in the discussions ahead of time. I wasn't in on all of these discussions, but I was aware of what was happening. And then also seeing it through like that first year of what private equity ownership looks like
Mm-hmm.
and what that means. And a lot of this is something that you want to, not that I'm going to like rat on PE or not, but like what they say ahead of time is not always what happens, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that can be true of any situation, but they want to promise you the moon up front.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of things that are like, but this is not necessarily how we thought this was going to work out. And they'll say things like, they either have systems in place that is going to make your
Mm-hmm.
business so much better, or they'll just totally leave you alone. You'll never even know that they exist. Both of those things are probably not completely true. So just when you're if you're having any discussions with private equity, just keep that, open eyes
Yep.
and don't assume that everything they're saying is true. But I've also helped a couple of clients either sell their business, get prepared to sell a business, or to purchase some kind of like additional businesses, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
additional service lines or whatever they are, so that they themselves can make their main business more profitable, or just a better service for the area that they're in. But those are all things I love. I could talk about buying businesses all
Yep.
day, so
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, especially given like the opportunity that's out there right now. It's like if you're a lawn care person and all you're doing is cutting grass and you're noticing a need for tree services, instead of just starting a tree business or on the side, just go and try to find a
buy
tree
one.
business that, yeah, and
Yeah.
then you already have everything. Or if you want to get into hardscapes or something, expand what you're doing. I think that's a good way to be able to get in there, and especially if you're semi successful and are able to make the deal work. um
Mhm. I also love, like, creating unique partnerships with other
mhm.
business owners, 'cause like your example, if you're a landscaper and then you're like, "Oh, this tree service, like, oh, I wanna offer tree service."
Yep.
Like, finding ways that maybe you're partnering with another one where it's like there's no ownership exchange, but you're
Mhm.
creating some referral partnership
Yep.
or some other way that it's like you get to expand your business and create more revenue without necessarily taking on the expenses of an additional business. Like there is lots of ways to create like unique ways to bring in more revenue by
Mhm.
partnering with other businesses as well.
Yep. And I think that you have a lot of experience, with having with your past. You have a lot of experience in this area, so I think a lot of business owners would be very, that it would be in their best interest to contact someone like you that has experience in that, if that's one of their goals. Make sure
Mhm.
that they know that process and have been through that process. Um, Can you kind of break down like the difference? Because I actually never heard of a fractional CFO before I met you and Mills. So what can you just kind of explain the difference between a bookkeeper, accountant, and a fractional CFO?
This is one of my favorite questions because, like, everybody, when they're starting a business, probably understands that they need a CPA in order to file their taxes. Like, some people might be able to do it for a few years on their own, but then eventually you get to a size where it's like probably a better idea to have somebody file your taxes for you.
Yep.
But where a lot of people get this wrong is they think that their CPA should also be giving them business advice, and be telling them, like, how could they be more profitable, or should they be hiring right now? And while those are questions that, like, I understand why people think that the accountant should be able to answer those. If you have an accountant that's really only does taxes, like,
Mm-hmm.
they're only thinking of it from the perspective of how does this affect your
Taxes.
tax liability, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not necessarily the health of the business that's at play. It's just, does this make sense for you to do? And that's where, one, your bookkeeper is more of just like, we want to make sure that we're looking at numbers that are accurate. So on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, making sure that all of your bookkeeping is up to date, your bank accounts are reconciled so that we know if we're looking at your profit and loss, is that actually what happened in March, or is it totally wrong?
Mm-hmm.
So think of it like your CPA and your bookkeeper are really looking at what's happened in the past. And then a fractional CFO is helping you make all of those decisions that are happening in the future. They are predicting your cash flow. They can model any changes that you want to do to your business, like whether you can afford to hire somebody. If you hire somebody, how much will that affect your gross revenue, or how
Mm-hmm.
much should it affect? Like, how much more gross revenue do you need to bring in order to be able to afford that person? Can you add a second location? Like, all of those questions that are, as you grow in your business, like, it's pretty easy when it's just one guy in a truck. You are the one that's going out and doing all the service calls, doing all the repairs. It's pretty easy to kind of keep your profitability in
Mm-hmm.
check. But then when you start adding other employees and debt service and all of these other factors that are suddenly like, I don't know how much I should be charging for a service call because I need to put all of these other factors into it and be able to pay these things and still make money. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where your fractional CFO will come in. And fractional just means part-time. It's like a
Yep.
fancy word for, you don't have to hire somebody full-time in order to be able to do this.
Gotcha. So when would you say, kind of, for most businesses, is there like a sweet spot when they should be looking for the services of a fractional CFO?
hmm I usually, in the home service businesses, I would usually say around that 1 million,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what your, like, revenue size, maybe even like 750 to 1 million, depending on if you've added a couple of employees or things like that. Um, but usually around that 1 million is when things get more complicated than the average person is going to know how to project and plan for. And your tax liability starts getting a lot more difficult. That's one of the things, like, on a monthly and quarterly basis, I'm looking at your P&L, figuring, like, if you've been really profitable, we need to start setting some money aside for taxes,
Mm-hmm.
having conversations with your CPA on a more regular basis so that we're not hit with, oh, April 15th, you owe 100 grand to the government and you weren't planning for that, right?
Yep.
Nobody wants to hear that. So
Yeah, that's a terrible surprise.
yes,
Yep.
exactly. I mean, it's great. You obviously made some money,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
on the other hand, like, who
Yep.
wants to give the government an extra 100 grand?
Oh
Nobody.
yeah. Yep. For sure. Um. So I hear a lot of times in marketing and stuff, when I'm talking to, a lot of times they'll reach out to me. Most of the time people reach out to me when they're having a bad time, not whenever things are good.
Mhm.
Because it's good and they're not really seeing the problem. But I hear a lot of times, that people are having great years, and then it's like they're still stressed about money. Why does that happen to a lot of the home, well, really any business, but I see it a lot in the home service businesses where they're making a ton of money and just it's just not
Yeah.
flowing properly?
Yes. I see this a lot too, right? Because you're looking at your P&L and
Mm-hmm.
it says you made, I don't know, $250,000. And you're like, well, that's not in my bank account. Where in the heck is it? And it could be something like it's in your AR, right? Like you have sold the job, you just haven't collected the money yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you've had all the expenses that you've had to front that money. So profit doesn't equal cash flow. So you can have a really profitable company, but constantly feel like you don't have any money. The other thing that I see a lot is that your profit and loss statement doesn't include any payments. So especially in the trades, right? Like you have van payments or
Mm-hmm.
equipment payments, lines of credit, all of those things that like the money is going out to pay for those things, but it's not on your P&L. They're on your
Mm-hmm.
balance sheet. So you are having to pay taxes on all of that money that you don't have because you had to pay for something with it. So there are ways obviously with taxes. If you've bought something, you can depreciate it and all of those kind of things, but those are things that you have to take into account when you are like looking at your cash flow. And depending on like your invoicing system, if you're on a net 30, like I mentioned, you may
Mm-hmm.
just have that money that's just sitting out there like it's in the mail. like
Yep.
we've all heard that term, right? Like you call somebody to
checks
collect something, they're
checks in
like,
the
oh
mail.
yeah, sent the check, it's in the mail.
Yep.
You're like, okay, well, I could really use that $30,000 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, the mail only usually takes a day or two, but suddenly it's taking 6 weeks.
Yep.
So all of those things are kind of things that I will help clients work through too, where it's like if you are constantly behind on your AR, if it's out 30, 60, 90 days, like can we incentivize people to pay early? Um, can we tweak things? Can we do different types of jobs that get paid day of and mix those in with maybe those commercial projects so that you're not constantly waiting on somebody else to decide when they will pay you. And that's something I see a lot too, as people transition from doing like residential projects to doing
Mm-hmm.
either commercial or working for builders, new construction, things like that. It's like they don't plan for that gap in their cash
Yep.
flow, which can then have like repercussions for years because maybe it's taken you $200,000 to float that 30 or 60 days. And it's like forever you're going to feel 200 grand behind because
Mm-hmm.
you are just always trying to figure that out. Um, this is something I could go on for hours about this probably too as well, but like,
Yep.
this is the time to ask for a line of credit. Like, do
Mm-hmm.
you have, and this is where like if your bookkeeping is not up to date, it's very hard to get loans and things like that are like, as soon as somebody is looking at your books, they're like, this is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to loan you money because first of all, it took you 30 days to get a P&L to us. So we don't really trust that it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're picking it apart pretty easily and finding errors. So just having outside eyes and people that are helping you go through all of these processes and plan for future things is really kind of the sweet spot of where you need a CFO and a bookkeeper.
Yep. For a long time, I was one of those that just flew by the seat of my pants. Just as long as I make it through the month, then I'm good. But
Mhm.
I was on a call with you and Mills that y'all were kind of talking about a lot of this stuff, and y'all were talking about looking out, into the future at your cash flow, looking at weeks out and even months out, and trying to make sure see those problems before they smack you in the face. So
Mhm.
that I think that's really good advice for uh, business owners, because we a lot of times, especially in the trades, because they're so good at what they do. That's why it's so hard to get people off of the tools and out of the trucks and all that, and get them in a office setting, because they're so good at what they're actually doing, and they don't really think about stuff like marketing. They don't think about bookkeeping. They would rather just go, do the
Mhm.
jobs, do what they're good at, collect their, get the money, and go on to the next job. And I think
Yeah.
that they really with that. I think that they just don't really look into the future. So
Mhm.
I know a lot of times with, and you experience this, I'm sure, with the industry that you're in, a lot of people don't contact me until like they need leads coming in. And I'm sure
Mhm.
with you, they kind of do the same thing, like wait until the last minute to say, hey, it's time to file taxes. Here's everything. And it's like, can you speak on that a little bit?
Mm. Yeah, you're dead on, right? I've had more people contacting me, and today's April 8th. This is when we're
Mm-hmm.
recording this. I don't know when it'll release, but like
Yep.
in the last month, I've had more people reach out and be like, my books are a must. Can you help me so I can file my taxes? And which is fine. I'm more than happy to help with that
Mm-hmm.
situation. But there's also like, okay, so we also need to be, don't just contact me every April. Like, let's set up something where we're looking at your books every month so
Mm-hmm.
that you can have a little bit more sense of security. But yeah, it's one of those things that like, okay, going back to the right before this, like you mentioned cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna plug a cash flow calculator that's on my website,
Yep.
mkbcfo.com, I think slash cash flow or whatever. You can plug in your numbers. It will give you kind of, it's very rudimentary, so it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
have every single thing, but it'll give you kind of a look at what your cash flow should be for the next 13 weeks. So go
Mm-hmm.
download that. Um, and that will help you plan out further than just, is there enough bank money in the bank to cover this week's bills?
Mm-hmm.
And then um as far as like guys that are in the trades, or women, that have just always like, they love what they do but they don't like the business part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they might like talking to customers, or doing certain pieces of it. I have a client, they're like a startup GC company right now, and we're working on getting all of these things set up for them. And every day he's just like, I just want to build things. And I'm like, we will get there. But first you have to do all of this work first, right? Like it sucks. Like for most part, most people don't like looking at their bookkeeping. I don't even like bookkeeping on a
Yep.
daily bit, like, right? Like it's not fun.
Yep.
Um, but this is where like having a plan and having like, there's procrastinating until it's due basically
Mm-hmm.
is never the solution. And like you just mentioned, so if you like, I am a CFO that is pro marketing. A lot of them will be like, you need to cut it. As long as
Mm-hmm.
it's working, I'm like, keep pumping money in it, because you're gonna need those leads.
Yep.
And over the winter, that might be the time that you might cut your budget a little bit, just if there's less money coming in, but don't cut it completely,
Mm-hmm.
because you need those leads coming in, right? Like you need money in the winter. Why would you cut
Cut
off
it.
your source of leads?
Mm-hmm.
So I will promote you anytime. Like keep
Yep.
paying chance, keep paying
Yep.
chance, right?
Yep. Um.
But it's that same thing. Like you just want to, like, don't cut off the source of revenue at the
Mm-hmm.
time that you need it the most.
Yep. Yeah. And what as far as like working with the home service businesses, what is one financial habit that you wish everyone would pick up that would just help their life so much more?
Oh my gosh. I could
So
probably
many,
name
huh?
like 10. Yeah.
You can name a
Uh,
couple if you want.
the first thing I would say, and I do feel like a lot of my business owners, whether it's just the word is getting out or maybe I've pushed it so much, like quit paying for things on personal things out of your bank
Mm,
account, right? Like that's a very
guilty.
simple thing to stop doing. And it really, because when you're building a budget for your business, you need to know what your business is spending. And it's the
Mm,
same for your personal, right? Like we need to figure out how much your pay needs to be based on your personal budget and what you
mm,
need. So if you're constantly mixing those things, it becomes this like muddy water of like, well, does the budget, does the, like, who needs to make this money, right? But it also becomes a nightmare, like bookkeeping wise, like kind of trying to keep track. And
mm-hmm.
then you get owner's draws of like $2.17 because you bought a candy bar and,
Yep.
all of these things. But That would be, problem number one. And it's a very easy fix, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you need money, just transfer it to your personal account and then spend it.
Yep.
Um, Aside from that, I think the one thing that I wish that business owners would get out of the habit of doing, and it's related to what we just talked about, like whatever is in your bank account right now is not what you have to spend, personal and business wise, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like having an idea of like when are your payments due, what's going to come out, so that you're not just constantly stressed about money, like having a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a buffer too. I love it when my clients have 3 months of operating expenses in the bank. That's hard to get to, honestly,
Yep.
because it takes a long time to build up. But if you're constantly just thinking about like saving, we're all going to have rainy days, right? Whether your business is seasonal in the true sense where you're like dead for 3 to 6 months, or even you just have one bad month for who knows what reason. Having some savings as a buffer
Mm-hmm.
is very important. I just gave like 3 tips in one. I don't know
That's
where we're
Hey,
going,
that's fine.
but
Hey, the more
they're
information
all,
that we can
yeah.
get, the better.
It's just these are all basics. You don't
Yep.
have to, like, to be successful financially, you do not have to know like all of these different like tax saving strategies and all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Like, learn the basics first, and then down the road, once you are like stable and not everything is an emergency, like then that's when you can start being more creative with your finances.
Yep. And I'm sure a lot of the things that you end up teaching business owners, or helping them with those habits in their business, I'm sure all that carries over to their personal finances as well, because those two kind of go hand in hand. If you're on your personal side, if you're in a lot of debt, if you're having to make a whole lot of payments and you're having to pull money from your business and not being able to put that money into things like marketing or proper bookkeeping, or just investing into hiring more employees, then that's going to make your business
Mhm.
suffer. So I think those two kind of go hand in hand. Do you see
Yeah.
that a lot as well?
I do. Yeah, that's a great way to describe that. And
Yep.
uh, this is one of the things that I would recommend. Like, if you're wanting to start a business or even buy a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you do that, get your personal side kind of in shape, right? Like, because no matter, even if you buy a profitable business, usually the first couple of months, you need to be a little bit more cautious. You
Mm-hmm.
need to make sure that things continue to run the same, that you are able to step in as the CEO or whatever it is, and be able to run at the same level that the business was operating at before. You may have extra, it's really expensive upfront. There's things like
Yep.
insurance and all of these things that you just like don't think about when you're looking at the business on a monthly basis, but they're just these upfront costs. So my advice is always like, well, let's start with your personal things. Like, if you are carrying a lot of debt and a lot of payments where you're like, I have to make X amount of dollars or I can't survive financially, like how can you get that number down,
Mm-hmm.
at least even temporarily, so that as you're not just taking money from the business when it's not ready to give it to you yet.
Yep.
And and if you're a startup, like we might be talking about 2 years or more before you're really able to get the business to a point where you're able to make whatever it is that you want or need to make from the business. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like you can't starve your business at first, right? Like you have to be constantly feeding money and keeping the money in the business to get it to grow, because growth is expensive.
Yep.
And anybody who
Yeah.
tells you it's not is lying. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there it seems like whenever you're growing, there's always something that will make that bank account go down a little bit. So,
mhm. Well, and I
um,
see that too, even if you've been in business for a long time. Like, let's say that you've been in business for 10 years and you've been at this like $700,000 mark, and you're like, you might be making a lot of money at 700,000.
mhm,
And so you're like, well, I want to grow. So let's grow to 1 million. All of a sudden, like at $1 million, you might be losing money,
mhm,
because suddenly to get to that million, you've had to add another employee, or new equipment, like things like that. So it's not always just this like straight line of profitability. It's like more of a roller coaster
Mm-hmm.
of like, okay, we're on the upswing, like things are going well. Oh, we're growing too much. We need to hire. So then it's like your profitability tanks. You need to have some resources in order to be able to cover those. Who knows how long? Sometimes it can be a very short period of time. Other times it might be like you might just have an entire year that just sucks and you're growing. Like you might
Yep.
have more revenue than you've ever had and you have no money.
Yep.
So being able to get through those times is important.
I know it's probably different in different stages of your business, but in general, how much do you recommend? What percentage of their money do you recommend for a business owner to spend on marketing?
So, you're like,
Is
yes,
there a
give me
magic
more.
number? Yeah.
um, it depends a little bit on the industry that they're in and how well ads might work for like
Mm-hmm.
an ad for a plumber or HVAC may be different than, somebody that's like a builder.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends a little bit on the industry that they're in. Um, I, you know, can recommend anywhere from like 1% up to 10% or
Mm-hmm.
more. And it depends on other factors too. Like, I know these are probably not what you're like, I want a percentage number of what they should be spending.
100%.
But it
No.
depends on like, do they have the money to spend on it, or are they going to have to go into debt
Mm-hmm.
up front in order to be able to float the cost of these, ads or whatever they're wanting to do for marketing? Um, I generally, when I'm talking to a client and I want to make sure that they're like, I feel like I keep saying the basics, but even the basics of marketing too, like, are we covering those things before we're starting to spend money on ads?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're a referral based business, are you going out and meeting people on a regular basis? Like those are things that we need to make sure that you're doing, because ads can't necessarily fix every problem.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, like if your leads are like, if you have ads and the leads are coming in and there is no limit to like, if every dollar more that you spend brings in more leads,
Mm-hmm.
let's spend more money, right? Like
Yep.
it makes sense to do so. But I think just in my eyes, I'm always just like, is your marketing working?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, keep turning on the faucet. And if it's not, like, let's figure out where, at what breaking point it
Mm-hmm.
stops working. Your return is not giving you the same, return on your ad spend or whatever it is. And then let's tweak it and go from there. So,
Yep. Yeah, that's what I tell a lot of business owners, because a lot of times they just want to, you know, throw a bunch of money for the budget. And it's like a lot of times that might not be the right idea, because you
mhm.
might, if someone spends $1 million on ad spend and everyone else is spending 10,000, of course you're going to get more leads because you're going to show up more, but that still doesn't guarantee you're going to show up where you need to show up every single time that someone Googles your name, or every single time on Facebook. It doesn't mean that you're gonna pop up in front of them. There kind of
Mhm.
is a point to where it doesn't really give you the
Right.
return,
Like
or
if you
there's the
spend
possibility.
5,000
Mm-hmm.
versus 20,000, like
Yep.
at 20,000, are you getting at least 4 times the amount of leads
Exactly.
that you were at 5,000? If you are, then
Good.
keep doing it, right? Like do as
Yep.
many as you can, do as much money as you can possibly afford. But if it's not, if suddenly you're only getting double the leads at 20 grand, why are you paying twice as much for that lead?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I see back behind you, you have a buffalo. Can
Hmm.
you kind of talk about the significance of that buffalo?
Yeah, of course. Because I also have a buffalo in my logo, if you've ever
Mm-hmm.
noticed that, in the
Yep.
B.
Oh, okay.
So in 2020, my husband passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and I it was unexpected, completely unexpected. And while I always loved buffalo prior to that, it like suddenly like I just clung on to this idea of a buffalo as like strength. And now it just
Mm-hmm.
became my symbol of strength for how do I get through this? And I got a buffalo tattoo on my arm. It was just like my theme for the year, right? Like I just needed to learn how to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've like, as you kind of in the entrepreneurial world, right? Like you'll learn, like I feel like a buffalo is a very good symbol for just being a business owner because it's like it takes some strength and stamina to
Yep.
stick it out, right? And to be able to like weather the bad times as well
Mm-hmm.
as, enjoying the good times as well. So that's kind of where I don't know that I would say it's an obsession, but just like it became a symbol for my life in a lot of different ways and just something that I've clung on to. And also, they just look really cool. So
Yep.
it's a good background.
Yeah. Um, as we're closing out, can you kind of just talk a little bit about, because I know that self development is big with you as it is with me. Can you kind of talk about the importance of developing yourself as a business owner, any business owner? But
Mhm.
if you have anything that's specific to the trades, you can throw that in as well. But
Mhm. I feel like with my own like personal development journey, I started doing things before I even really knew why I was doing them. I just knew I was not necessarily happy with, like I mentioned before, right? Like I wasn't necessarily happy with the career path that I was on in a lot of ways. I wanted to own a business, but I didn't know what. So I was just like, I need to figure out what they're doing. Like, how do people know what business they want to be in? And how do they know how to run a business and how to, like, all of these things. So I just started learning before I even had a reason to.
mm-hmm,
Um, and then that would like introduce me to new people. And then it just kind of, it snowballs, honestly. And anybody that's probably been through this same journey can testify, I'm sure, to like, at first, you're just kinda, like, trickling things in. You might find little, like, clips on Instagram or whatever that are motivating, and then you go down this rabbit hole, and before you know it, you're, like, fully engulfed
mm-hmm,
in learning and teaching yourself and meeting people and all of these things, and it's been super important. I would not be where I was today if I hadn't started that kind of trickle 10 years ago or whenever
mm-hmm,
I did, even without a reason. I was getting into entrepreneur groups um, before I had a business. I was just like, I need to be around these people and maybe something will rub off and I will suddenly have this great idea.
mm-hmm.
And along the way, I just kind of like turned into the person that I wanted to be without realizing it.
Yep.
And obviously I'm by no means a finished, but it's one of those things that I think that the more that you are around people that are doing things at either a higher level than you or they're doing the things that you want to be doing, like they will just rub off on you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, before you know it, you're doing those same things. And it's like suddenly you're reaching for like higher, people that are up on the food chain higher than you
Yep.
and like doing things that you would have never imagined are possible.
Yeah, and I think like you hear it all the time that you're the sum of the five people that you're
Hmm.
around the most, and it's amazing to me. Like with us, there's so much access to good people now. With it, it can be people that aren't even in your local area, but just having that group of people that you can be around that kind of share the same goals, share the same ambition that you share, and just kind of look at things in a similar way that you look in it. That helps out a lot because a lot of people are from could be from smaller areas and not really have access to that. But now with the way everything is, it's like
Hmm.
the internet kind of drops that barrier and you can just meet
Exactly.
good
I
people
also
all around the
think,
world.
having people around you that will call you out when you're
Mm-hmm.
making excuses for things. You don't
Yep.
even maybe even know that you're making an excuse for things, but they'll just be like, questioning you on, well, why haven't you done this yet?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, whatever it is that you want to say, like, oh,
Yep.
I'm waiting on blah, blah, blah. And they're like, that's actually not something that you have to wait on. You can do,
Mm-hmm.
go do this instead. And sometimes it's just like hearing it from another perspective, like, oh, there's another option. I'm not actually stuck on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I think in the blue collar world too, this is something like you have kind of two groups of people too. You have people that are like not like they have been doing the same thing. They don't necessarily need or want to be out meeting people and doing the whole personal development kind of thing. But then you have others that are like, I want to grow $100 million company. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to do that. I'm going to go meet every single person that I can find that's
Yep.
done it before me. It's the same as any industry, but I think there's a big divide on who has and hasn't done it in the blue collar. So if you are a person that's willing to go out and share your wins and your losses with other people and get feedback on your business, you will like skyrocket above people that are just kind of staying stagnant.
Yep. Yeah, I think that with the business owner, a lot of their success depends on how much that they're going to invest in their growth and just learning new things. I mean, I think it's very important. And the people that I know that are the most successful usually put in a lot of work into their self development for sure.
Well, and there's so
Um.
many things too, just right now, like the world is moving at such a
Mm-hmm.
fast pace. Like you can't run a business the same way you
Mm-hmm.
could 30 years ago. There you need to constantly at least know what marketing is out there, what new lead
Mm-hmm.
sources, what AI could we incorporate into our business. Is there a cheaper way to do these things? Is there softwares available? Like these are all things that you just have to constantly be open to learning about. So if you're kind of stuck in your bubble
Mm-hmm.
of not knowing what's out there and what's happening in the world, you're going to be left behind.
Yep. Are y'all seeing a lot of AI? I'm sure like most industries are. What kind of AI are you seeing that's either helping
Yeah.
business owners or 'cause I know in my industry there's as a marketer there's things that I see and I'm like, wow, that I don't look at it as replacing me, but I look at it as, hey, that's a tool that I can use because most of these business owners they just want to focus on fixing air conditioners and cutting down trees and building buildings. They're not going to want to sit and learn all this stuff. So it's like it didn't really take my job. It just kind of changed the way that I approach
Yeah.
things.
I feel like it can make my job faster and easier, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the more in like with AI, right? Like I was 2 or 3 years ago doing
Mm-hmm.
all of the analysis very manually. Like I'm having to pull the numbers, I'm having to plug them into an Excel spreadsheet, I'm having to like comparing all of these different things and build it manually. And now it's like I can just hit a couple buttons, all of that information preloads for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I still need to be the one that's like analyzing it and with that human perspective and like business owner perspective on how all of these things are going to affect the business. But all of the like manual work that I was having to do before is much easier and faster. So I can
Yep.
actually get information to the business owner at a faster rate.
Yep. Well, I appreciate the conversation today. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I know it's been a good conversation, and you're one of the guests. Whenever I was thinking about this podcast, I was like, I have to get Jen on because I know that you're very knowledgeable in this area, and you have a great story. And I think that business owners and listeners of the podcast can definitely get a lot of value out of your knowledge and your services as well. Where can everyone find you?
Well, first of all, thank you for all of
Yep.
that. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. MKB CFO and bookkeeping is usually how you can find us.
Mm-hmm.
If you have questions, like I love talking to people like for free. Like I will
Mm-hmm.
tell you kind of some if you want to send me a P&L and be like, what am I doing wrong? I
Mm-hmm.
can do a quick analysis of that. So jen@mkbcfo.com, shoot me an email. I'm happy to chat with anybody and just I want to see people succeed. So
Yep.
if in any way I can help with that, that's what I want to do. So
And I'm gonna put the link down below in the description for the 13-week cash flow projector. And then if you have any other tools that they could download, I'll be happy to put those in the description as well. So make sure y'all check down in the description for those. And I really appreciate the conversation. It's I knew it would be a good one, so I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.